I don't know, so many of us fall into the trap of thinking, well, I mean, the future's going to be different. You're right. The future is going to be different. But it's not necessarily going to be different in the way you want it to be unless you're designing it to be different in the way you want it to be.
Everything's relative, and it kind of messes us all up because you can think you're great when you're not, and you can think you're awful when you're great. It's you have to be very careful what you benchmark against.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we help you level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. Today, for episode number 1761, it is Freestyle Friday. And if you are new to Freestyle Friday, it is kind of an episode where Alan and I turn off the lights in the studio and we just have a conversation. And we don't usually know what we're going to talk about. I don't really know what we're going to talk about, but I wanted to start with a question. A question that I think I saw somewhere or I heard somewhere that I thought would be a valuable jump-off point for us. Mr. Alan Lazaros.
What's happening?
What is one lesson that you have learned in life that you wish you didn't have to learn the hard way? Alan just got off of therapy right before this, so this is probably not the best timing to ask this question.
Quick existential crisis question. That I didn't have to learn the hard way. Okay, the lesson that I learned the hard way was that people can be good people, but not be good for you. I would rephrase that. People are on a spectrum, and it's a bell curve. And if you are of the belief that all people are good, you are naive, for sure. Because there is manipulative, terrible, self-interested only, pathologic people that will deeply hurt and prey upon you. There are predators, and that is the truth, and you will learn that one way or another. And that's the far left of the bell curve. The far right of the bell curve is there are people that are just the most virtuous, wonderful, good-hearted, oriented toward the greatest good people out there. And then there's everyone in between, which is not 100% good and virtuous, and not 100% vice and not virtuous. And so everything is constructive or destructive. And the lesson that I learned the hard way is that some of the people that might be good people, and they might be on the higher end of that virtuous bell curve, are still not good for me. That I learned the hard way over and over and over and over again. And in therapy, I've analyzed this a lot. Trying to figure out, just because someone's a virtuous person doesn't mean that they're not going to try to tear you down. Because everyone is deeply insecure, and the people who think they're not are actually the most insecure. Ironically, it's one of those paradoxes where if you admit you're insecure, you immediately are a little less insecure. It's one of those weird things. Whereas, oh, no, I'm not. I mean, you couldn't offend me. You ever hear someone say that?
Of course.
Like, trust me.
I could if I wanted to.
I could. Yeah, I really, really could. Oh, no, I'm not mad. I mean, I'm not triggered. Oh, okay. Yeah, you're not at all. So again, at the end of the day, people that are virtuous and wonderful in their own right might not be wonderful for you. And that's been really hard to learn the hard way over many, 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 many years. Honestly, decades. Yeah.
I think mine would probably be time changes everything, but it doesn't change everything for good. Because when I was younger, I just assumed that as I got older, I'd get more successful. I seriously, that was my thought. I didn't understand the strategy to it. I just got off a call with, I was just telling you, potential clients, or I don't know, whatever. They may end up clients, they may not. It was a great call. My goal was to add value. We got to the end of the call, and they came from one of the Evan events. And he's like, what question didn't you ask me that you should have?
Nice. It's a great question.
It was a great question, and I answered it. And then he said, all right, what's the last thing? Like, what's the last takeaway? Don't pull any punches. Just be very honest with us. And I said, you guys will never make any meaningful amount of money unless you start treating this like an effing business. And they both sat back and went, whoa, okay, yeah. And then they both started taking notes.
Nice.
Because I was of the belief that if we just did this long enough, things would happen. Now, to a degree, you get opportunities potentially, but doing consistency isn't enough. Consistency just isn't really enough. I've seen the same people in the gym every day for 3 years. Unfortunately, nothing has happened for them. Nothing has happened because they're consistent, but they're not necessarily improving. And I look different than I did 3 years ago. Better or worse, sometimes depends on the month and what's going on. But at least I know that when I'm not making progress, I know why. And I feel like I really learned that the hard way. I feel like I wasted a lot of years assuming that, I mean, even if we think about the journey of how this has gone, I never thought I was going to be successful externally, had the opportunity to be successful externally, and I was the most internally broken I had ever been. But I thought that I spent an entire year grinding my face off, just traveling all over the place, staying in sketchy hotels, staying up all night, driving hours and hours and hours, thinking that year was going to change my life for the better. And it did, but not before it changed my life for the worse. And I didn't understand that at the time. I told you this. I remember one day I was working out in Western Massachusetts, right next to Six Flags. There's Six Flags in Springfield, Massachusetts, I believe. I believe it's Springfield. 2 hours from where the shop was at the time. So that morning, we probably had to be there at 7 or 8. So I probably got to the shop at 4 o'clock in the morning and loaded up the van, drove 2 hours to the job site. We're like 6 hours into an 8-hour day, and my boss called me and said, hey, I need you guys to go to New York tonight because we have an emergency that we need fixed tomorrow, and I need you guys there tonight so you can be there at 7 a.m. tomorrow. We had to drive back from the job site to the shop, 2 hours. Then I had to drive to New Hampshire to get clothes because we were going to be there for the rest of the week. I didn't have any clothes. Then I had to drive back to the shop, and then we drove 6 hours to New York. And then got like 4 hours of sleep and then worked an 8-hour day. That was my life for a year. Pretty much every week was mayhem like that. But I loved it because I felt like I was making progress towards a meaningful goal. And just to have all of that blow up in my face, it kind of sucked. Now, that grit and grind and all that resilience has really paid off being a business owner. I was thinking of this yesterday. It was like I pretty much work 12 hours a day now. Monday through Friday is just 12-hour days. And it's just kind of normal now. It's like, I don't even really think about it anymore. It's like, oh, okay. I get up at 6 and then I work until 6, at least. Depends on the day. But now that's kind of easy. It's not that hard anymore. And I think a big piece of that is because of the misalignment that creates alignment later. But yeah, it's that. It's, I don't know, so many of us fall into the trap of thinking, well, I mean, the future's going to be different. You're right. The future is going to be different. But it's not necessarily going to be different in the way you want it to be unless you're designing it to be different in the way you want it to be. And again, we're at this really powerful age where we're in our mid-30s, and there's a drastic difference starting to become very, very easy to spot where somebody has put their time, energy, effort, focus, and money over the last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. So that's been blowing my mind too, in sad ways too. I'm not from a judgment thing, but just from like you can kind of see things starting to unravel for people right now, and that sucks.
NLU listener, what is happening? I just wanted to jump in here and let you know, if you want to get to the next level faster, we have a free virtual monthly meetup at the first Thursday of every month, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. You can connect with like-minded people and become a bigger part of this amazing global community. The link to register will be in the show notes. Well, there's no such thing as something for nothing, and I think that's another... I don't know, I always felt like that I understood. You can't party all night and not have a hangover, just like you can't work all week, every week, hard toward meaningful goals and not have something good come of it, right? There's virtue and vice, and I remember I was in 7th grade with Mr. Hallisey, and he wrote 2 words on the blackboard back then. It was virtue and it was vice. And we were studying the Romans, because I think that was where, the Roman philosophers of Lucius Seneca and all them. Aristotle, Socrates, all that.
Jeff Palmieri.
Jeff
Palmieri?
There was one Jeff Palmieri back then from your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, who I believe once said, virtue and vice. No, but he wrote Virtue and Vice, and I remember thinking, and I remember being very, very drawn to those 2 words and realizing that that's something. I didn't know what it meant yet, but I knew vice was alcohol, drugs, destructive activities. And virtue was this universal moral code that of the human condition, where compassion and love and empathy and hard work and discipline and justice and virtue and all things good, all things constructive, I guess you should say, right? I knew that meant something. And I remember vividly looking around the classroom wondering why no one else cared. That's like a good metaphor for my life.
Yeah, you could put that in any class, probably. Any situation, any class, I'm sure that's occurred.
Just looking around like, am I the only one who knows that this is the ticket? This is the... And back then I was surrounded by a lot of people who were just drowning in their vices. I mean, everyone think of their worst time in their life. I can think of my worst time. Alcohol, vices, just tons of vices. Kev, with your porn challenges. Vices are vices, right? I mean, making love to the person you love and want to be with and have a relationship with that's constructive and growth and wonderful, with its challenges, is amazing. Watching porn for pleasure is not going to give you a meaningful life.
Very empty.
Yeah, exactly. It's empty. It's not fulfilling. And so virtue equals fulfillment, and vice equals quick fix, expedient pleasure. And I remember knowing that even when I was really young, because I remember looking around like, why doesn't anyone else care about what he's talking about right now? This is the answer to life. This is it. This is the power of choices, right? Virtuous versus vices. So anyways, the other lesson that came to mind when you were talking, Kev, is that everything's relative. I always knew that, and Einstein was always someone that I was fascinated by. And he did the theory of relativity. So E equals mc squared. The point is, I'm trying to transcode here for a second, but at the end of the day, Einstein understood the theory of relativity, and the theory of relativity is actually very useful in real life, in practicality. So, for example, I was on with a client earlier. His name's Cole. Cole, what's up, man? He listens to NLU every day. Cole, what's up, brother? Shout out to Cole. Cole's 24, and Cole got an Oura ring, and he's tracking his sleep, and he feels great right now. And I said, isn't it interesting? Let me teach you this, because I wish I knew this when I was your age, seriously. What if, I said 0 to 10, how well do you feel? Because he's like, I feel great, I'm killing it, I'm doing 100% days. I think he's 2 weeks with 100% on his peak performance tracker, his habit tracker. And he's tracking a lot too. I think it's 15 habits plus like 7 metrics. So good for you, Cole, seriously. But anyways, so he's like, I'm feeling great. I'm feeling good. I feel like I'm making progress in the gym, XYZ. I said, okay, 0 to 10, how well do you feel holistically? And he said 8. And I said, isn't it interesting how your 8 could be my 4? And the reason this came up is because Emilia and I, we got an Oura notification yesterday that said our cardiovascular health. And apparently I have the cardiovascular health of an average 27-year-old. So it says -8 for mine. And hers is she was joking. She's like, mine's a 29-year-old. She's 29. And so I always knew my calendar age. I still am hoping to hit puberty. I'm joking. But I always knew that my biological age was younger than my calendar age. But anyways, the point is that everything's relative. So what if he thinks he feels great? But what if him in 5 years, that 8 is actually going to be a 2? So for example, you have a great relationship, right? But that's because you've had a bunch of shitty ones.
Yeah.
Dude, that's the problem in life.
And I had a moment today where I was like, it's been so wonderful lately. Not that it isn't always really good, but just lately there's just been so many laughs and so many giggles and so many jokes and such high energy, and just it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful.
It's a great word.
Yeah, it's just been wonderful.
Well, the laughs and the playfulness, I was thinking about this yesterday too. You and I are very Kev more behind the scenes than on the podcast, but even on the podcast, I was watching a speech that talked about play and what play means, because our cats and our dogs, one dog, 2 cats, we eat dinner on the couch in the evening, and sometimes we'll watch something on the projector, sometimes we won't. And the other night we weren't, and we were just hanging out, and they always, whenever we're there and we're in a relaxed state, which quite frankly is fairly rare because we work most of the time, they just start wrestling. Do your cats wrestle?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And in this speech, the speaker was basically talking about how play is a indicator that all parties involved are in the challenge skills sweet spot. They're in the order and chaos sweet spot. Meaning things are safe enough to where play can flourish. You know how, and again, I'm not a gardener, but I like metaphors. So let's say Kevin and I were to build a garden. Okay. We'd have to protect it from the bugs, and we'd have to make sure, I don't know, the storms don't kill it, and blah, blah, blah. So we'd create a safe environment for the strawberries and the blueberries and whatever else tomatoes, whatever. That's what play indicates. In a relationship, when Emilia and I are really playful, and we sing, and we dance, and we make jokes, and you and I in our business, when things are overly tense in our business, we stop joking. You don't. You actually joke more.
I think I joke more, probably.
I don't. I think that but again, when we're in a good state, we can make fun of each other. We can make fun of ourselves, as long as it's not malicious, and you can tell in the energy when it's a dig versus versus a playfulness. That playfulness from you and Taryn, I think that's an indicator of the health of your relationship.
I would agree.
And I've started to really analyze that in my own life as well. Is if you can't be playful, there's probably something beneath the surface boiling in you or in her or in our business or whatever it is. And again, back to everything's relative. Kevin's got a 10 out of 10 relationship, I think, compared to most. I do actually believe that to be true. I think you're on the very, very, very high end. I've been watching marriages my whole life, and some of them scare the hell out of me. You have a very positive marriage. That's very, very clear, statistically speaking. But here's the thing. If I asked any listener watching or listening to this, 0 to 10, how healthy do you feel today? They would say, I don't know, let's say they said 7. That 7 could be a professional athlete's 2.
Yeah.
And my therapist right now, she's going through some challenges with her shoulder, and she's in a lot of pain, and she's having trouble. And she's working on it. But she feels like crap, and she can't get her work done. And so it's this interesting thing, and this is the lesson, is everything's relative, and it kind of messes us all up, because you can think you're great when you're not, and you can think you're awful when you're great. It's you have to be very careful what you benchmark against. If you benchmark against Michael Phelps in the pool, you're screwed. You're always going to feel terrible. But if you benchmark against a 3-year-old, you're always going to feel like you're awesome when you really aren't. And so that's got to be one of everyone's inaccurate with their own identity, from what I can understand, and my goal in coaching is to help everyone be more accurate in their thinking. And I've come to realize almost all of us are inaccurate because the benchmarks that we have around us are total echo chambers that we really struggle to figure out.
Yeah, or you compare to somebody that you don't really know, something or somebody you don't really know.
Yep.
And then behind the scenes, it's completely different than what you're actually comparing it to, which that makes it a challenge. All right, we get a pop because you and I both have calls in the next 3 minutes. If you want to make sure that you are leveling up every single day, even if it's a little bit, again, there is no magic bullet. I think the magic bullet is consistency and doing it long enough for it to compound. We do an episode every single day on all the podcast platforms as well as YouTube. So make sure you are subscribed where you're watching, subscribed where you're listening. And if you would leave us a review, that would be wonderful because it would help us help more amazing people like you. What do you have to say?
I just got yesterday my 25th client. Youngest
Congrats.
is 16. Thank you, brother.
You're welcome.
Youngest is 16. Oldest is 63. Everywhere on the spectrum, from all over the world. Anywhere from someone, hey, I want to start a YouTube channel and I want to be more consistent, to, hey, I've been in business for decades and I want to scale and grow this thing and I'm a multimillionaire already. So you do not have to be already in a business in order to start business coaching. I can teach you business in advance. I would love to. So book a free call if you're interested. And if you want to grow or scale or start a podcast, Kevin is your guy for business. I'm your guy for podcasting. Kevin's your guy. And we love to meet our listeners. So even if that's all that comes of it, we would love to meet you. Seriously, don't feel bad.
As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we don't have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
It's all relative. Next Level Nation.